This is a great way to kick off. Hashtag Love Art Create.
Woo!
What's that?
I have no idea.
Um, this is Callie Ross right here. And that over there is Gabby Robbins.
Hello,
And
hello.
that one right over down there is Morgan Wiley.
Woo, hello.
And tonight we are on late because these two gracious ladies let me be gracious to a friend and help her out with something. So we are up late. It could get exciting from the standpoint that we could get really goofy. I even named this hangout outlines. Wait for it. The bones of your story.
Ooh, dun dun dun.
It's not really as spooky as I thought it would come across, but I think we could maybe definitely work with it. My creativity has already been used up for today, I think. So we're left with lamativity instead of
Oh no.
Ooh.
Did you see that was so lame? It's just like oozing out of me. It's what's at the very bottom of the barrel at the end of the day. Okay, so to move right along, as you can imagine, we're talking about outlines this evening, ladies, and I have a few questions for you in regards to outlines because one thing Morgan was texting back and forth before the hangout was about plotting, and I think that one thing that, as far as writing is concerned, that we might maybe, I don't know if confuse is the right way to put it, because it's not necessarily a confusion, it's more that we kind of intertwine plotting and outlining. And they can be, technically. So when we talk about outlining tonight, I'm going to be kind of specific about what an outline really looks like, and there are a couple different ways it can look. But do you consider what you do right now to be plotting or to be outlining? Morgan, how about you go first?
Well, I was asking myself this question not too long ago. I was trying to do a little research on this, and to be honest, I'm not sure what I do. I think I do a combination of the two. I mean, if there is a distinct difference between them, I think I mesh them. But I think I'm going to go with I do a little bit more outlining than plotting.
Okay. Gabby, what about you?
Mm, when you guys were talking back and forth about it, I was not really completely getting what you were talking about, but I tried to think about it when I was preparing. And I do feel like there's a confusion, and I don't know that I know the difference completely, but when I think about it in my head, I think about outlining like what you would do for a paper with points and breaking down like paragraphs and plotting out a storyline, which is how I would play it out in my head. So I kind of feel like I do more plotting than I do outlining. I might be translating it wrong, but hence the reason why you're my friend and you're an English teacher. I don't know that I know the difference.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, this is so good. Morgan, were you going to say something?
No, I'm with her. I think you are our master here tonight.
No. Let's not go that far. But one thing that I do teach is research paper writing. I don't get to do a ton of creative writing with my students unless it's like writing exercises and we're getting ready to kind of dive into some serious stuff, and I like to keep it light beforehand. And when you're writing a research paper, you outline. That, I mean, it's just straightforward outline. You don't necessarily have a story to tell, and if you do, it's in the midst of a lot of facts. So when it comes to outlining, it is just kind of what you were describing, where it's the listing of what's going on in which paragraph. Now, outlining when it comes to novel writing, I think can be seen in a couple of different ways. I actually found this really cool website, and I don't know, like, legally how they would feel if I shared my screen right now, like, so that you guys could see what this website looks like. So instead, I'm just gonna I'm gonna look at it and I'll read these things to you. But there are 8 different ways to outline a novel. But specifically, I think that you guys, what we've talked about is the skeletal outline, which is
Are you on Lit Reactor?
What?
Are you on Lit Reactor?
Yeah. Is that what you found?
Yes, that's what I was reading over too.
Yeah. I was going to talk about 2 different types of outlining because they're my favorite, because of the different types of papers and short stories that my students write that I teach. But then I was also going to talk about a third way that it's kind of my own way that I've like dementedly figured out that works for me. But what I wanted to talk about was the skeletal outline. That is where it's the bullet points. It's the paragraph 1, paragraph 2. And in this case, for a novel, it's more along the lines of chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3. And then you kind of fill in the blanks about what happens in those chapters. Now, is that what you would think plotting is? Either of you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. And this is the thing. Where outlining is the bones of the story, plotting is actually like the meat, the muscle of the story. So they do go hand in hand, but when it comes to plotting, plotting is along the lines of a synopsis, coming up with what really makes your story juicy or what makes your story meaty, and it's more detail-oriented. Where outlining is that skeleton, it's the framework of everything. So you guys know about my mad obsession with note cards, right?
Mm.
You guys, I have them everywhere. They're like in every bag that I carry. They go to the classrooms with me. I like hand them out as prizes because they're so exciting. And I don't think I've ever met anyone that really loves them as much as I do. But I was the note card queen in college, in addition to the homecoming queen. And it's because every test that I ever took had a study guide made out of note cards. And note cards are your friend. But when it comes to outlining these things, this is where I'm coming into like what I do. I take a chapter and write an outline for each chapter on each note card. And that might seem a little obsessive compulsive. Gabby, this
I love it. I told you, you showed me how to do that on our writer's retreat, and like I thought I'd really outlined, and when I started realizing I didn't know how to break down my chapters, I was putting them, you said do it in the note card, I started doing it that way, and now my note cards are the note card on Scrivener, and so every time I'm going back and forth from chapter to chapter, I'm like, ooh, I forgot this whole piece, or I want to put this in between, and I just move my note cards down, and there's my new chapter. And it's almost like, because I've never done this before, I'm not naturally able to break my story idea into chapters quite yet, and I think that was a big kind of block for me, that this helped me when she gave me that, to be able to break it up into feasible bites. Now, will it stay chapters like that? I have no idea. But just for me to get the story out, it's helped immensely. And I liked writing them out like on the actual cards at first, but I loved putting them in Scrivener, and so now they're there for me when I want to just at a glance look at what my chapters are about. It's really helpful. So no, I think it's great. I love it.
Well, and there's not really a technical name for this outlining. We could call it the calinator or something like that. Something really cool. Again, I'm in lame mode, but I found it very useful. I think that the reason that I bring this way to outline up first is because plotting is taking a character or a scene or a setting and figuring out what their story is, and it's really getting deeper into why they do what they do, and outlining is how they do it or how they get there. It's like the bones. It's like the steps that lead to where the ultimate goal is, but you still need the plotting, the character to actually go there. Mm-hmm. So as far as plotting and outlining, that would be my definition for both, and how you kind of distinct or can differentiate between the two. And like you said, I guess it was you, Morgan, that you said you do both at the same time. I feel like I kind of do that when when I have my little chapter note cards. I can say what's going to happen in that chapter, but then I get into sometimes the plotting inside the outline, and I'll even give a reason or talk about maybe a thought process of a character through that chapter and what they're going through. And that's where the plotting is. So, Morgan, do you want to talk about another kind of outline maybe that you did a little research on?
Well, I mean, I was looking at a few different things. Like you said, that skeletal outline, I do that probably not quite the right way, but like they have it broken down. Well, that to me looks like plotting because they've got it broken down into like the 6 core points of the story, which is how my plot worksheet looks like. So yeah. So I guess maybe I'm a little confused on that still, but also there's another one on there called the flashlight outlining, which I've found myself doing actually for this new book, which is basically it's still the list, but it's chapter by chapter with a couple sentences summarizing that chapter. And it kind of looks like this, since I won't show you the paper. This is my one, so I have chapter and chapter and chapter. It's not very far, but it's working so far. So yeah, so that's the other one I've been doing.
Gabby, have you been or ever tried another type of outlining before, or plotting that maybe worked or didn't work even?
I feel like I tried to do outlining more in the sense of like a paper at first, and it was too bare bones at first. It kind of freaked me out because then I was like, how am I supposed to make this into a story now? Like, and I think it intimidated me for a bit. And that was right after I had done like a book about writing. And I had to kind of like start really researching on how other people did it and fleshing things out. And so then I got more, I feel like with everything for me, it was kind of like, because I didn't have anybody kind of walking me through it, or like a class where you go, yeah, this is normal. Like I got really wigged out by, you know, an outline, and it was so bare bones and how to figure it out. I didn't understand how to do chapters. I didn't understand how to do any of that stuff. So my first go at trying to outline was kind of, it just panicked me. And then I think I've kind of just, I think in a weird way, not pantsed it in the sense that I just was like, you know what, I'm just going to try to write it, you know, and fill in and test it out that way. So really, I haven't tried a lot of different things, but I know my first go really kind of freaked me out.
Yeah, I think that it can be very daunting. I think that there's another one that I want to discuss, but Morgan, you look like you have something on your mind.
Well, and maybe this is what you want to discuss. I'm not sure, but it kind of goes along with what Gabby was saying, how she felt it was real bare bones and not enough meat there. One of the other, I'm on litreactor.com for anyone who's interested. It's the eight ways to outline a novel. And one of them on there is, he mentions the snowflake outline. And I had saw this on another website called advancedfictionwriting.com, and it is the snowflake method for designing a novel. This man has taken this process and he's created a software for writers, and it is basically, he talks about how when you create a snowflake, there was like all these steps. And so it starts very simple with very simple one sentence, and then it keeps expanding on that same sentence with more questions, and then it's each character and more motivations and things about. So basically, it keeps expanding and getting huge to where it has all of this meat that has expanded to basically all you have to do now is kind of just put it together and write it, which I thought was really interesting. I've never tried that approach because that to me seemed a little overwhelming. But I was reading through it, and I thought, well, you know, that could be kind of cool, how step by step it was, but just growing it as you're His process, though, it looks like took about 2 to 3 weeks to do this. So I was like, so you have to really be wanting to take the time to build that. But his point is that it will also cut down on your writing time because you've got it pretty much all mapped out in this huge pattern of design. So just throwing that out there.
Yeah, no, I actually looked that one up too because I thought it was so fascinating, and I really think that you could actually use it in a couple of different ways where it's not as complex as the way that he's doing it, because
Yeah.
it wouldn't have to entail the entire story, but you could break it down and make a snowflake for each character, or make a snowflake for the main events of the story and leave the characters out. But I mean, there's so much you could do with that, and I feel like that it reminds me of this spider web outlining that I love to do when I'm writing. And I usually do it involving specific scenes. I don't do it for the whole book. So in a chapter, if I'm really struggling with why a character might be deciding something, or I want them to decide something and they don't, and it's like all of you ladies know what I'm talking about. The people that are not writers are looking and watching me and thinking I'm really crazy. But sometimes it's taking that character and writing their name and then shooting off 4 or 5 different lines from their name or even from the decision and listing out why or why not, and then from those listing out more reasons, whether it's backstory, whether it's something that's going to happen in the future of the book, whether it's another character that's keeping them from making that decision, and I'll play with that. And sometimes it can be that there's a compromise that's made, where I can kind of go with what's happening. But then sometimes I figure out a way to manipulate the scene to go the way I want it to, but maybe I figure out that it's not that character that makes that decision, it's another character. But those little spider webs, it can be a character, it could be, like I said, a decision that's being made. For me, sometimes I like to do them for individual characters before I even start writing a book, so that it's stuff that's physical, that's about that character, and then personality traits that are about that character, and it kind of just spider webs off into this really awesome looking cool 70s clock that has all these little things about the character. They could be decoration, actually. But I mean, just random things like their favorite color and their favorite food, but then also, if they could go anywhere, where would they go? If they could be someone else, who would they be? I think it says a lot about a character, but that's another way to outline, and I would like to say it's actually more like plotting, because you're figuring out more of the meat of what's going on, and then you can apply it to your story through the outline. Now, one thing that is really cool about the method, the snowflake method that I saw, was he starts out with this triangle. So essentially, you can start it out with the beginning, the middle, and the end. And then you can place another triangle over that triangle, or you can do lines outside of it, but add events and issues and concerns and different things that happen between that beginning, that middle, and the end. And honestly, that's how I build my outline when I'm first writing a novel, because for me, usually it's more character driven. Like, I think of a character and then I think of what has happened. I will say recently I've had a couple of ideas, and it's not about a character, it's actually the idea of the book that comes first, like the actual
premise,
plot. One thing that's interesting is that when you're outlining, you can take that beginning, that middle, and the end, and that's what I do. It's like I make those 3 note cards, and then I fill in with the other note cards. How do they get from the beginning to the middle? How do they get from the middle to the end? And honestly, I actually do it on a sheet of notebook paper first, and then I transfer it to note cards, because I don't want to waste that many note cards, because I know I'll mess up or something. Because I love my note cards. But the thing is that I think that I don't know how pantsers do it, and I still pants. Don't get me wrong, because honestly, I have right now an outline up to 15 chapters, and the first 8 chapters have become the first 10 chapters. Does that make sense? Like there was stuff that happened that prolonged the story. It made it longer. So I actually, after about 10 chapters, will actually re-outline my novel.
Wow.
To make sure that everything's going according to plan. Plus, I hate it when my note cards are off. Like, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Okay, so let me ask you another question because I feel like I'm boring the two of you.
No, no.
No.
How do you think? Well, first of all, I think we've agreed that. Do you agree that outlining is productive?
For you.
Yes.
Okay. How do you think that it changes your experience? Because I think we've all experienced writing without outlining. But how do you think it changes your experience? Because I think that as a writer, if I'm somebody that doesn't normally outline it and I have great books and they're awesome and I love them, it's not going to be that I tell you, you should outline. That's going to make them outline. It's going to be that there's something that we experience when we're outlining and writing a book that is different than what they experience. And then they're like, ooh, I want that. Like, I want to feel that way. So, Morgan?
I think for me, because I didn't start out outlining and I've been growing in that, it's helped me to be more focused on the story, and I'm a pantser, so I write, but I mean, I've got my points that I'm getting, but in the in-between parts, I kind of just let flow usually, but I am trying to be more disciplined with that, and it's helped me keep things moving faster and maybe more quality because I've thought about it a little bit more, and so I am prepared for where I'm going with it. So I think that's really the biggest thing for me, and in being focused, I actually feel more freedom to play with them a little bit more because I know where they're going. So instead of trying to figure out where they're going as I'm writing, which there's flexibility in there, but I think being a little more structured has freed me up, which sounds ironic, but
No, I think that's awesome. And I think that's cool how you said that because I can write a chapter and add a kissing scene and add some skydiving. That it really hasn't happened, but like it's funny how you can have 3 or 4 points that you want to make in a chapter in your outline already put together, but then amongst those 3 points, like 4 or 5 new ideas come while you're writing. But if it fits, it fits.
Mm-hmm.
So, Gabby, what about you? What is your experience with outlining versus not outlining?
Well, I feel like even my first original try at outlining, it was a little bit daunting and stifling because I didn't have enough to go on. I'm not a pantser, absolutely not. But once I started doing more, like fleshing it out more and giving myself more structure, just because I felt like I'm the type of person who likes to read things where you feel like everything happens for a reason and there's all these cool behind-the-scenes things that are happening that you might not realize for a while, that I was going, how are you supposed to put all this in if you don't know where you're going? So I feel like every time I sit down now with the cards, like the way that I set it up, I at least feel like I have somewhere to go and it reminds me. Do you know what I mean? Because I feel like I'll be in this chapter and I'll remember, oh, I want to make sure I hit all these points because at the next chapter I need to make sure I talk, foreshadow this or get these things going before I get there. It helps me to remember and to not lose things in the mix, and let the things that I really want to shine through, I don't want them to fall through the cracks because I don't get dedicated large like spaces of time to write. I have to remember those important points I want to hit, and it's just really helpful to have them there.
Well, and I think that one thing you have to realize is that there is an element of plotting involved before you even outline, because you do have to know something about your characters, you have to know about your setting, you have to know what the end game is to be able to reach it, and to be able to actually outline to that extent. And what's funny is there's actually, the reason I bring that up is there is a website that I found, and it's actually an article, and I'm hoping I'm saying her name, Alicia Rasley. And I don't know if you saw this, Morgan, but it was written in 1998. I know it sounds, gosh, I was a teenager, which is crazy. So it actually, and I'm
just talk about that's the year after I got married. Okay, teenage.
You were a teenager too, though, right?
I graduated. That was a year after I graduated.
Yeah. Yeah. That's about right. Okay, so we don't have to talk about age.
No.
Let's talk about what this woman wrote. Okay, so Alicia Rasley, she actually has an article that teaches you how to outline your novel in 30 minutes. Now,
sweet.
Like I said, this is actually more of a plotting exercise, but it will give you not only some great feedback and some interesting thoughts towards your plotting, but it can work towards giving you some bones for your outline. And again, it's one of those things where I feel like that plotting and outlining, they are interchanged so easily in our world of writing fiction that it really does get confusing. It does get mixed up in our minds. But I think there really is a difference too. It's aliciarasley.com, and I was going to show you, /artout.htm. I'm actually going to put the link in our write-up and little description. But, like, for instance, you set a timer for 5 minutes for each question, and there are 9 questions. So, like the first question, are you ready? At the start of your book, what distinguishes your protagonist from other people? What central strengths does he or she have, and how does this strength get them into trouble? So you spend 5 minutes answering that question.
Wow.
And then you do that for each question, and at the end of it, you're supposed to have enough for an outline for an entire novel. Now, I mean, like, it would be rough, but you could really tell, and it's kind of something we did earlier where we were talking about, is your idea really a novel, or is it a short story, or maybe is it just a bedtime story that you tell your kids while they go to bed? Do you have enough content? And I think that this would be a really cool exercise to do. I didn't even know it existed until today, because it was written in 1998. But it is kind of cool, and so if you are interested, I will put the link up for you.
Cool.
Okay, last thing. Do you think that the way you outline currently will always be the way you... Gabby, what do you think?
I probably will try different things until something feels... Right now, everything's just so difficult, because it's so brand new. So I'm sure I'll try something different just to see, if it's any easier another way.
What about you, Morgan?
Yeah, agreed. I mean, I think we are hopefully always growing as people, growing as writers, and things evolve. And so, yeah, who knows? My outline for how I'm doing it now might not work for something in the future, or I just, want to try something different because, like before, I didn't do this before, and now I'm finding it very helpful. So other things, might come along as we continue to move forward. So, yeah, for sure. I don't know if it would be, I don't know. I was going to maybe say maybe it's not a good idea to say I will never try something new. I always stick with what works. But maybe that works for somebody, It's what works for you, and I think I'm still learning, so we'll keep trying.
Yeah. I think for me, too, it's like that creativity aspect of it. Like, if there's something that someone throws out and says, hey, you should try this, I probably, if I find it interesting and intriguing, I probably will try it. Yeah. But my note cards will miss me. They will be so sad. And I think that, like, as much change as I'm up for, the note cards, they just want me to maybe, like, change up the color. Like,
that's good too.
Yeah, it's one of those things where sometimes we can form habits, and sometimes they're not always the best habits. So I would give up the note cards if there was a better idea. I would. But we just have to be willing. Um, Ladies, is there anything else that you want to add about outlining or plotting that I have not discussed so far?
Did you want to talk about if there is a difference between outlining for a single novel as opposed to a series, and if it's different?
That's brilliant. You even mentioned it earlier. I just forgot because I'm so tired. And
No, it's fine. And maybe that's another show. I don't know.
Well, honestly, I think you have to be able to outline differently for different situations. I honest, like I said, I think when I do these note cards, I really outline each individual chapter because they each get their own note card. And then all together, it's an outline for the novel. And I think that when someone, I can't remember who it was, but it was someone that I was probably extremely happy with the ending of their series that I actually took this advice. And I thought, that's brilliant, because I think some people claim it and they don't really practice it. But before you start a series, you're supposed to know the ending. And that would take outlining all the way to the end of the series, don't you think?
Who was it that told you? Who was it that told you though to do it backwards? To plot or outline backwards. I remember we talked about that.
Yeah, we did talk about that, and I can't remember who it was, but that was another brilliant person, and I don't remember who. It's so sad. I should remember who these people are, and it's probably on another episode. I could just watch the Hangout and figure it out. But that's another thing. That's a great way to do it, Gabby. I'm so glad you said that, because some of us might be overwhelmed by the idea of outlining 5 novels. But if you do start at the end and work your way backwards, I mean, it's kind of brilliant. Although, I will say, I just watched Lord of the Rings, not Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, the very last one. And I'm sitting there, and I teach, not The Hobbit, but I teach British literature. So I teach the whole process of how he wrote those books and everything. And even with Peter Jackson getting a hold of those books, there are ways he told that story in the movie that made me wish the book was different. Just a little, to be like his movie. So one thing I have to tell myself is that no matter how I tell this story, beginning to end, whether it's 3 novels, 5 novels, 10 novels, the longer it gets, the more options someone that's reading it has to think, oh, they shouldn't have done it like that. So a duology sounds good to me.
So did you plot that or outline that, the 2 books originally, or are you doing that now?
Well, for me, I actually knew the ending to book 2, but I did not outline through book 2 until I was about halfway through book 1. And what's even crazier is once I started book 2, I gave myself like a 6-month break in there without writing anything for it, and a lot of it changed when I re-outlined for book 2, if that makes any sense. And I don't mean like the ending changed, but the in-between, the storyline changed. And part of it is because I wanted a few decisions to be made by my main character earlier on in the story to make the ending more believable. And the decisions that she makes in the end believable, if that makes any sense. I think that you have to be true to your character, and if the way you're going, if there's no way that end is going to be feasible for them, whether it's they haven't grown enough or they've grown even too much, I mean, you really have to take all of that into consideration. And that's plotting. So, Morgan, what about you? How about your series?
I did not outline it. I do know the ending. So, I mean, I have that goal that I'm working towards and places I need to get along the way. However, now 3 books into it, I do wish that I had, and I am going to be doing that forward now through however many books I need to get to the end. Because, I mean, and especially in a series, especially in fantasy, I think, too, there's so much involved. I really do wish that I had been much more detailed in my outlining. So, lesson learned. You know, trying to build that in now at this point before it gets too far. But yeah, there's just so much to keep track of, so many people, so many, each character should have their own outline. The world has an outline. There's an overarching I mean, it's just there's a lot. So yeah, I would definitely recommend, if it's a series, outline the heck out of it.
Yeah. Well, what about you, Gabby? I'm really curious because I know you were on book 1, but I don't think that you are thinking this is a standalone, do you?
No, and when we talked about outlining backwards, that's when I sat down and was like, how much of this, how far do I want to go with this? And haven't looked at it again, but I want to say it was no more than a trilogy. And I was even toying with the duology idea just to see if I could get 2 really meaty books out of it. And I think I can. I just feel like it's really hard because I'm still trying to figure out doing the first one. But I do have an idea of the ultimate ending, so I feel like at least I'm plotting towards that still, and that I'm not giving away too much that I won't have enough to do a second or a third book. But I don't know. I mean, maybe I will try to do that snowflake outline for one of them and just see if I have enough. I think my worst fear would be I put all this time and effort into one book and I try to like stretch it out to 3 books or something, and then I have that middle sad book. I just don't want to do anything like that. So I don't know yet. But yeah, if at all possible, I'd like to kind of plot it out so that I know what was going to happen in the second or third book.
Yeah, I think we've all decided outlining is crucial. And it's not as much for the reader as it is for the writer. I know that sounds crazy. It ends up being great for the reader because then there's a little bit better flow, I think, in the writing. But as a writer, like Morgan said, there are so many storylines sometimes, depending on what you're writing. And then even what Gabby said, you don't want that middle book to be that sad book that doesn't have anything happening in it. So as a writer, I think an outline really does help me keep on track with making sure that there's action in every chapter. The plotting is what helps me to make sure that there is growth in every chapter, or that there's some sort of story impact in every chapter. But that outline, I think it really does make a big difference as far as mapping out the way to the ending. It's the bones. It's the skeleton. We need bones for our stories. Otherwise, it's just a big glob of bleh on the floor. I'm getting a visual. This is not good. It's like the blob.
I wonder if this would be something interesting to kind of look up. Like people who do stuff like the books like Name of the Wind and, Game of Thrones, where they have so many characters and so many storylines that intertwine, but it's like this big kingdom, world, if they plot or if they pants. Because you just think to yourself, like, we know J.K. Rowling did. We've all seen her little outline of all the books and all of the little goodies in there. But, I just can't imagine if you didn't. I think if I were to find out somebody who did a really, intricate, amazing world novel, or even something, just to keep track of your characters, if they pants the whole thing, that's some pretty amazing brain power to be able to do that.
I think it could be, but at the same time, they can just kill whoever they want to if they forget who they are.
Right. Which I heard, I don't know if this is true, but I did hear of an interview that was done with George Martin, that she was asking him, so I would love to be in your office and see what it looks like. Do you have, characters and things and stuff all over? And he said, no, it's all in his head. I don't know if that's true, but and I was just like, really?
Well, and it goes to prove that sometimes we can have a really great idea, a really great story in our head, and it can be built up and it can be written. Okay, it could be made into a television show. We could be making millions of dollars, but the key is what happens to all of his characters?
Really?
They all die. And we don't write books where people all die, do we?
Die really awful, horrible deaths too. Gosh.
Now that's what's funny. I have not read the books. I've not watched the show.
Not even.
And the thing is that like you just hear your friends talk about it, at lunch or whatever, or your friends' husbands talk about it like it's the best show on the planet, and you're sitting there thinking, honestly, I couldn't. First of all, it's too gory, but I couldn't stand having everyone die every other episode. Like, it would kill me. I can't do it.
You got to know that it's much worse in the books. Like, that's just my thought process, because he can describe it and if it's that intense in the TV show, can you imagine what it's like in the books? Like, oh my word! Like,
I'd rather not. I'd rather not.
I'm gonna read it. I want to read them, or at least start one.
We need to video that.
Yeah.
That was one idea we had a while ago. I think Gabby wanted to pick out chapters for me to read from random books so that you could see my reaction as I'm reading it.
Do that.
That would be amazing.
That could be funny. Because I'm a very animated reader, and I also love to read in an accent. I love it. Like, my students think I'm nuts, but I love it.
We should do that at our retreat, and we could get a whole bunch of different kinds, and that way she could do it in front of a live audience.
It'd be so fun.
As long as I can bring my Dr. Seuss, we're all good. I'll need a brain break from whatever y'all bring, so my Dr. Seuss will keep me happy. Just don't bring any of that Nicholas Hoult stuff or Nicholas Sparks stuff, whatever. You know I'm tired because Nicholas Hoult is an actor, and Nicholas Sparks read stories where everybody dies after they fall in love.
Just like George Martin. I mean, there's not much difference to me.
Yeah.
I don't want either of them.
Well, I think we've all then decided that outlining is crucial. You have to. If you don't want everyone to die, you just have to. Well, so that we don't fall asleep, because Morgan's starting to kind of lean over to the side, and Gabby's falling asleep on her arm. We're going to go, and we hope everyone really got something out of this as far as outlining and plotting. At least knowing the difference, I think, is key.
That's helpful.
And we'll have the links for everybody if you want to go look up some different ideas of how to practice or play with, or even just trying to figure out what works for you as far as outlining is concerned. Yeah?
Yay!
Bye, ladies.
Bye.
#LoveWriteCreate.